Hey friends, you're watching Brainstorm Acres. I'm Henry. My wife and I have been building this homestead now for 17 years, and we've done 90% or more of the labor ourselves. Digging holes, digging trenches, building the house, it's all been us. So we try to show a little bit about what's going on here and share some of our knowledge and our experiences. And one of the things that I've been working on for the past several weeks is installing a Chinese diesel heater. I just got it running, but now I have a few things to finish off. One is I'm going to insulate the exhaust pipe where it goes through the wall of the greenhouse. I don't want to set the greenhouse on fire, so I need to do that insulation. I'm using a product called Fiber Frax. It's used commonly in glassworks, so if you're busy working with hot glass, like being a glass blower, which I did at one point as a fun hobby, this is the stuff that's used by many people to line their furnace. It has a very high melting temperature, well above what this diesel heater will get. But it will work just perfectly fine to insulate that exhaust pipe. I need to pack that in there, so I'm going to go ahead and use these long needle nose pliers. The whole point of this is to avoid burning this chipboard wall. You know, I've had a lot of people help me with this. They may not think of it as help, but they'll ask questions. My friend Steve from Digwell Greenfingers and Ronald Shaw from Ronald Shaw's channel have asked a bunch of questions and offered some suggestions. You know, it's really nice to have people alongside you, well, virtually alongside you when you're working on these things. Irene and I will bat ideas back and forth, but having somebody who's not on site here giving commentary actually helps. It makes me stop and think, could there be something to what's being asked or what's being said? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. That piece is in. I'm going to go to the outside now and stuff some more of this insulation material in from the outside. If you can hear that crunching, it's me pushing this ceramic fiber through the wall from the outside so that I'm being relatively certain that I'm getting the entire thickness of this wall protected from the hot exhaust. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and block off a couple of these holes, at least temporarily. We had a really low temperature last night. You know, we're always playing this game of how cold is it going to get, or how hot is it going to be? How much rain are we going to have? How much rain are we not going to have? Well, last night the forecast was that we were going to have temperatures right around a little bit below freezing. But you know, when we got up this morning early, before the sun came up, it was 16 degrees. Now that's a whole lot cooler than what was being proposed by the weatherman. That's the sort of thing that you just have to take in stride. It happens. Fiberfrax. It's a ceramic, but it's been spun into really fine material that's like wool or cotton wool. It's very soft. It isn't something you want to breathe. It can cause all manner of pulmonary problems, lung problems. So when I cut it, I cut to make sure that I'm not kicking up any dust. Nice thing about this bat material is that it doesn't have a lot of dust unless you're really scrubbing it. Well, I need to go ahead and put in the air intake. I'll get that in. I just need a wrench. I'm not going to use these. I think I have one over here. The importance of putting this air intake outside is because if something goes wrong with the ignition process in one of these heaters, it can cause smoke to back up into your living space. Well, in this case, into our greenhouse space. And that's not something that we want. And it can also lead to more carbon monoxide. Which is also something we don't want. This inlet hose, the intake hose, is soft. It's not like the exhaust hose. It's easy to crush the intake hose. Let's see if that's tight enough. I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit more. I think that's going to do it for tightening up the intake hose. I'm ready to go ahead and start it up again. Now, if you look back over the past month, you'll see that I talk about a lot of different things when it comes to this heater. One was the instructions given by the manufacturer didn't match up with this unit. And the problem with that is that every one of these units has a different set of requirements for turning it on, programming it, priming it, doing all those things. I just turned the heater on. The sound of a fan, that's really great. Oh. Ronald Shaw sent a link to a video that describes how to program this controller. You can set a bunch of timers and things like that. I'm just interested in getting this to run and verify the temperature of that exhaust tube. I'll be using an infrared thermometer that I have to get from the house. Well, anyway, back to this controller. The instructions that came didn't go with this controller. The instructions caused a lot of problems. Well, fortunately, Ron and Steve sent me information about how to program it. And ironically, there was no way to find that information using any kind of search tool that I could find. Well, the pump is going click, click, click. Well, I mentioned that my plan was to install a switch in this line. There's a fuse here, and in order to reset this machine, whether it's the handheld controller or it's the controller in the heater itself, you have to turn off the power to the unit. Now, Steve made a really good point, and it's one that I thought about. He said, you know, you don't want to put a switch in there because if you turn off the switch accidentally, you're going to cause major problems for that motherboard in that heater. And that's true. But you know, I'm not planning to put in an ordinary switch. If you've ever been around safety equipment that has difficult to turn off switches, like if you're in the military. Hey Steve, you know what I'm going to talk about. You have a switch and then you have a cover over it, and the cover is difficult to flip up. And once you have that cover flipped up, then you can change the position of the switch. So that's my plan, is to get a switch of that kind. We're blowing hot air right now. Well, I've turned my back to that heater so that you might be able to hear me. I said earlier that it's good to have other people communicating with you when you're working on this kind of a project. When you're on it by yourself, it's easy to get tricked. Well, right before I got some of the comments from a bunch of you folks, I decided I was going to go ahead and strip this heater back and go to all the way back to basics. And then I found out through a series of tests suggested by Ron that my fuel pump doesn't in fact pump fuel. Not much good. Well, one of the problems of buying a product from China in particular, but other countries as well, is that there's sometimes a lack of, let's call it quality control, customer support, call it what you will, but there's a general lack of that a lot of times. Not all the time, but it happens. This pump was supposed to pump 22 milliliters every time a pulse went to the pump. And that would shoot some diesel fuel into this heater. It was actually sometimes clicking once, and then it would stop. So I'm not sure what the problem is with this pump. It may be a piece of dirt in it from manufacturing. It could be that there's a problem with the electromagnet. That's just a bunch of wire that's wound around the little piston that's going to go up and down. It could be a lot of different things. I can do some tests to figure it out. But you know, one of the problems that I have is that when I contacted the seller, this is a seller that has very specific rules they have to follow based on the platform they use to sell me this product from. I've been in communication with now 4 different groups that say they are representatives of this manufacturer. Well, one of them finally told me, well, we don't support that product through this platform. You have to go to this other platform. So I ended up going to Amazon, which is where I actually bought this particular heater. And I tried contacting the manufacturer and no response, and tried contacting the manufacturer and no response. So I sent another method of responding that was complaining about the product. And all of a sudden they say, well, send us a picture of your problem. Well, I've sent so far 6 pictures of this pump. Still the same pump, still the same problem, but now I have to do it one more time. And my guess is, like a bunch of other people, I'm going to be told, it's your problem. I don't know how to prove to them that this pump doesn't work. If I hook it up and it doesn't pump, they can't see that. Would they be able to believe that I've hooked it up? Maybe, maybe not. You know, when you live off-grid, rural in the United States, it can be sometimes difficult to get people to come out and assist. In the case of this Chinese diesel heater, there's nobody going to come out and help me with problems that I have during an installation or operation. The only thing I can count on is friends like you to help in the process. Now, I had a really frustrating call today, not with the Chinese diesel heater, but with our range. You know, we have a professional style range for cooking on. We have 6 burners, a grill, 2 ovens. It has worked great. And there's been a problem that's cropped up, and I've been trying to find somebody to come fix it. Well, I finally got the one company that deals with this product in northern Arizona. And you know what they said? We don't service your area. We'll come within 20 miles of your place, but that's it. And the woman on the phone was pleasant at first, but when I said where I lived, she was quite rude and said, well, if you want it fixed, bring it to us. And I just told her what the range was, what kind of range it was. And my comment to her was, do you have any idea how big this thing is and how much it weighs? And she says, well, that's your alternative. If you want to get it fixed, you bring it here. Well, that's not customer service. That's not even reasonable behavior person to person. I was willing to pay extra to have somebody come out to my place, but they're dead set on not doing it. You know, living off-grid like we do and living in rural America has its benefits and it has its drawbacks. One of the drawbacks is you can't get service sometimes. And then you can't get the manuals to fix it. I don't know what to do. People out here used to buy from a specific store because they knew that they could always have a repairman come to their place if there was a problem. Well, that store is out of business. It's a national chain. Well, it was a national chain, but it doesn't exist anymore. So that strategy doesn't work anymore. What do? Well, that will be the topic for a future show. Irene and I will sit down and talk about that and how we deal with it and what you might be able to do too. Now, the exhaust temperature is about 280 degrees. It's pretty warm. It's a good thing I put that insulation.
I could feel this when I came in.
That's on the mid-range.
Right. Very toasty.
Well, it's time to go ahead and get tools packed up. I think my work here is done for the time being. It's working, maybe not fast enough to save those tomatoes, but at least it's working now, which means when we start planting some other plants out here, we won't have to worry about them freezing. Well, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications because we have a lot more going on here. There's more heating things going on. There's more gardening things going on. I think I froze the tomatoes last night because it got too cold, and I think I ran out of propane. Take care, and don't forget to brainstorm because you know we're always doing that.